Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you're all fresh and bright again after the coffee break. It was a very interesting morning. I'd like to express my thanks, to you, Mr. Chairman, for inviting me to this super interesting event. A lot of things that I'm actually going to touch upon in my talk have been mentioned this morning. And one that's very close to my heart is the further development of digital government and digital democracy, even though I have to admit, I'm not an IT person. I'm one of these sort of dinosaurs from the past, a civil servant who has a legal background, and particularly in continental Europe, this was the overarching profile of civil servants. So in that sense, my approach to disruptive technologies and the changing dynamics of governance is the view of a practitioner, probably from a very European angle, because I worked most of my life for and with European administrations at the EU level, national level, and local level. And also, of course, the discipline that sort of shaped my thoughts and my cultural approach, it's the legal sphere. But when we talk about disruptive technology and the changing dynamics of governments, the legal framework and legal issues and legal ethics and the principles of the government, the state, and democracy are quite vital. So I think it is a good combination. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to go north, east in Europe now, and show you an example of a country that's very tiny, but it has developed into the technology innovation hub, not only in Europe, but outside Europe. And as you can see, but this is a pure coincidence because I'm Austrian, and I'm very proud of it, but I'm actually wearing the Estonian colors thanks to the hub, because you added the blue, the beautiful blue to it. So I'd like to show you a video of a country that has been acknowledged as, let's say, the technology and innovation hub worldwide. Now let me see, who of you has been to Estonia? You see? And who's had visitors from Estonia? Now, who has never heard of Estonia? Right, that was nobody. Good. Can I get the video just to set the scene for what I'm trying to share with you?
Our new digital world knows no borders, and great business ideas are no longer limited by where you work or live. E-Estonia is a digital nation for global citizens, for those who've thrown off the shackles of national boundaries. Literally anyone in the world can apply. E-residency is legitimate and transparent. A government-issued digital identity that gives you the freedom to run a global EU company online from anywhere in the world. Establish a company within a day. Access business banking. Use international payment providers. Digitally sign documents and contracts, and declare Estonian taxes online. We're Estonia. Tech is our expertise. And through e-residency, we are empowering entrepreneurs everywhere. No matter where you were born, no matter what passport you carry, you can apply. Use e-residency to run your business from anywhere in the world. Unleash your entrepreneurial potential, because no business should be bound by physical borders. Apply for e-residency today and join our new digital nation. e-resident.gov.ee.
Ever heard of it? E-residency? I don't assume there is any Estonian e-resident in the room, is there? No, I'm probably going to be one of the first ones, but it's not my purpose here. I'm not going to make sort of advertise and market, the Estonian e-residency program. But what is so interesting about the Estonian experience, is this on or off? On? Yes. The motto of this project, when you check the Estonian e-Estonia website, is join the new digital nation. Right? And this is basically what they have been doing or trying to do, and what the paradigm change is when it comes to digital government and governance for the 21st century. We need a paradigm change. We need to look at things from a different angle. And that's what the Estonians here have done. Because basically, what e-residency offers is to anyone, any entrepreneur across the globe, to use Estonian government services to conduct their businesses. Yeah? Using electronic identity, using electronic signing of documents. So basically, they understand the Estonian government here, or the services, as government as a service towards global citizens. Now, Estonia is a very small country, 1.3 million inhabitants, and a lot of also, Estonian citizens live outside Estonia. So basically what they also offer, and you've heard about it, lots of electronic services, basically everything, every service is for the citizens electronically, using electronic identity, which you can use from anywhere, at any time, at any place. Including, and that's really the pioneer work of Estonia, e-voting. So in the upcoming European elections next year, Estonian citizens across the globe where they are will be entitled to vote from wherever they are, using their electronic identity and the government as a service. And the interesting point last week in an annual conference in Estonia of the president of Estonia was really, we like to see government as a hub, as a safe, and I think she even said cozy hub for our citizens. And knowing that we can no longer be bound by physical territory, we need to adjust. Government has to be at the service of our citizens, of our entrepreneurs, but also globally. And we need to make sure that in this safe and cozy hub, we provide the necessary level of trust and security. So this is Estonia, but as I said before, I'm not going to talk much more about Estonia, but I thought it indicates really quite well what we are looking at. Trying to move, yes, it is in the word disruptive technology that really bothers us, or bothers me as civil servant. I was trained to ensure institutional continuity, legal certainty, and the rule of law. So disruption is not in the DNA of public administration. It has a very negative connotation, really, as opposed, to the constructive destruction concept of Schumpeter in the business world. So this is a real game changer here, that disruptive technologies sort of force us also to be disruptive in government, where we actually, the rationale is to be conservative rather than disruptive. Now, let me go back one step again, looking again into my institutional legal civil service background, is when we talk about technology, innovation, and public service, we need to distinguish, and I think in the debate that we hear, quite often this is mixed up, the different roles of governments. Yeah? In the first place, when we talk about disruptive technologies, the government's role is to be a promoter, to be a sponsor, and not to stifle innovation by jumping into early with the second role, probably the regulator's role, right? Where you try to regulate the negative or the positive, the negative sides of technology to ensure that the public interest is safeguarded. To also ensure that there is a balance between the stakeholders in society in terms of, in particular, the public and the private sector. So a third role, and that is the one we quite often talk about, and it was the initial discussions in the European Union when I was years ago, leading the European e-government awards, we were mostly talking about e-government as the user, and in that sense a very narrow spectrum of basic services. The government is a user providing critical infrastructure, government services. Again, is a very different role. Here the question is, do I want to be the innovator? Do I want to rely on technology that is not proven? So we see quite a difference in approaches here. When I look at the European Union context, there's some of the countries are quite, let's say, bold, trying to leapfrog and take on technologies that are not that, well, mature, I wouldn't say, but rather innovative. Let's look at the Scandinavian countries, for example. They do that. But my country, for example, Austria, in that sense, is much more conservative. We try to rely on technology that has been proven, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the services are bad or that this is a wrong approach. I'm just saying this is the policy choices, the choices that you have to make, but it's also, of course, related to different types of factors in the context, which means also, what is available at hand in terms of financial resources. Sometimes it's better to use something that has been proven as a viable solution and that's not too expensive than rather, jump for the leap and then get onto an endeavor that might be quite costly and even risk prone. But it's very much also related to the risk, the readiness to take risks in government. So these three roles should not be mixed up, and it's a kind of balance that you have to strike. And when you look at the technology, developments and look at the technology trends, it is really important, to distinguish at what stage, the role of the government should be the relevant one. Now, it is also important when you think about the policy cycle, right? Because the policy cycle in government business should be sort of aligned to the technology developments. That's a huge challenge because we've heard already this morning, and everybody knows the velocity or the rapid development of technology makes it very difficult, to align our policy process, let alone lawmaking. So some are now advocating for what is called anticipatory regulation. I think it was our colleagues from a UK-based think tank, Nesta, that calls for a more agile type of legislation that allows experimentation, that allows iteration of laws, and that allows a faster reaction and adaptation to the technological changes. Because if not, we probably run the risks of either what we tend to do in continental Europe, focus too much on the regulation and hamper innovation, or we're running late because we're not adapting and we cannot protect our citizens because we miss the role of the regulator that has to come in at a certain point of time, or as a user we're losing out because we cannot offer the service quality that is required in this globalized world. The talk here is actually based on a conference that took place in Singapore at the Excellence Center of UNDP. We had discussions on this topic, and then a publication will follow shortly, and I think the Astana Hub and Mr. Chairman, you play a vital role in this publication. We did some short survey among participants, but also among the UNDP to prepare for the Singapore conference. And also, of course, desk research, but the key technologies that we identified as the most disruptive for the future, and I think it doesn't come as a surprise, is the Internet of Things. So not only people connected all the time to anywhere and everywhere, but also machines connected, and we're looking at loads and loads and loads, I forget the figures, of data that we can collect to help, manage environmental problems, disaster management, etc., traffic management, etc., etc. Another very much hyped technology is the blockchain or distributed ledger, which promises, unseen ways of safeguarding data integrity. Well, there's already some criticism about it because it depends very much if it's organized in a private or in a public chain. And then, of course, which is now the super hype, artificial intelligence. So basically replacing human decision by a machine decision and using all the data that we will get from the Internet of Things to enhance and to learn, how to replace basically the human, if you will, intelligence. That's the negative picture that's being painted. But those are the three technologies that are on the horizon, which governments are watching out. There's lots of initiatives. I'm not going to bore you with details here, but for example, the European Commission has just embarked on a new Artificial Intelligence Alliance with key stakeholders, where they are going to look in particular also into ethical questions and into legal questions that come along with artificial intelligence. And at the same time, putting more money, exploring how to foster and to promote research in artificial intelligence in the European context, so not to fall behind. Now, the policy areas that we found were the most sort of critical in the digital government of the 21st century is security. It is cybersecurity, but it's also security of the citizens themselves. Safeguarding, their integrity, protecting them from identity theft and all types of crimes that might affect the citizen. But of course, I don't have to elaborate on what it means in terms of the nation-state concept. Another issue is, of course, again linked to it, is the privacy and the integrity of personal data. Again, here a lot of talk has been, and you've probably heard about the new European regulation, the data protection regulation that's just been entered into force in Europe. It sort of tries to safeguard the European citizens' fundamental rights to privacy, which will also be or should be enforced vis-à-vis third countries. And then, of course, another area, and that is very, I've indicated in the beginning, talking about Estonia, it's the trust of the citizens, the trust relationship between the citizens and the government, and what we call the social contract. So those three areas, policy areas, and the three technologies are closely intertwined. Now, we have identified 6 key, sort of high-level, key challenges for governance in the 21st century. And one of them I've mentioned already, but I think it has not really come down to us, and I don't see it happening. I see that this idea is sort of embedded in the Estonian approach. It is that we have to acknowledge the global nature of the digital space. That means, and with the technology, that the rules of engagement will fundamentally change and can fundamentally change. We have unprecedented ways of engaging citizens and stakeholders across, the territorial borders. But it means also we need to think about how we draw the lines between the different realms of enforcement and the judicial boundaries, the traditional ones that we have. So we're talking about rethinking international governance. A second point, and I think it has also been mentioned this morning, is the relevance of assessing, where's technology headed? And we need to have these internal capacities within the public service to be able to adapt, our policy cycle, our sort of policy decisions and choices in relation to the technological developments. And we need to be aware that we should be more responsive, even, as I said before, anticipatory when it comes to regulation. And the mandate is also, as we've heard, and this is what the Sustainable Development Goals say explicitly, not leaving anyone behind. A third key challenge is basically the rebalancing of this three-dimensional role of the government. We need to find, and we have seen, or we're seeing, very hybrid models of governance emerging. The technology allows us to crowdsource law. It allows us, to co-create services. So we have a lot of tools at hand which raise new challenges for administrations, but in particular also to the civil service servants per se, but also the frameworks of the institutions and the legal framework. And again, here a very important aspect will be not to leave anyone behind. One more challenge, and I've mentioned that before, is really we have to continuously update and review the social contract with the citizen. We have to ensure the boundaries between, the personal sphere of the citizen, and that is probably a very European approach, as you have heard before, with the Data Protection Directive regulation. But we also have to, at the same time, guarantee that data can flow freely, and we provide access to data to all for the use, the good use, and for the common good. Another aspect is, and I think that's very important, because we tend to, looking at the technology hype cycle of Gartner, we tend to, once the point of the enthusiasm is gone, we tend to sort of be disillusioned about technologies. And once people before we enter into mainstream of technology, we tend to see, in particular in the public sector, very negative sides and impacts only of technology. I have a feeling this is happening now with the artificial intelligence topic, right? We see too many of the negative sides. But we always have to see also the positive sides, what kind of problems can be addressed and what kind of solutions can be found with these new technologies like artificial intelligence. Yeah? It can also help us, for example, to fight fake news. So what is important when you design national strategies, that you have these positive and shared views. And what is really, I saw also with the hub here, and with all the people that are in the room, is the living proof, sharing experiences and exchanging opinions on these new technology and implementations and their impacts and how you solve these burning issues is vital. And as I said before, we have to really consider and learn from others and put our heads together and put our forces together and put our resources together to explore how we can better organize the legal and institutional frameworks to tackle these issues. Always respecting, for example, when it comes to artificial intelligence, the European Data Protection Regulation actually entitles the citizens to ask what kind of algorithm has been used, and also it requires that a review of any kind of decision taken by the machine has to be supervised and has to be reviewed or reviewable by a human being. Now I wonder how we're going to implement that in practice. That's a different ballgame, and we'll see. But anyway, I think it is important that we think about that. And last but not least, and I think I've heard it, I don't know how many times here this morning, and I'm sure I'm going to hear it more often in the context of the conference, is education. Education of the society at large for a resilient society in the digital age. I think we have to make people more aware about the risks, the vulnerabilities we're exposed to. We see this discussion now starting, with the recent problems we had with, I don't want to name, to mention, names of companies, but I think everybody knows what I'm talking about when it comes to the use and abuse of personal data and using it for profiling. But we have to educate our citizens, and we have to also make sure as governments that we provide, and this again was emphasized by the Estonian presidents, the secure infrastructure, the secure and cozy hub for the citizen at the same time. Right. Education, I think it is the key. And that goes for our kids. And I think this is a process that has been started with the European Data Protection Regulation, that people are starting to think about what happens to the data. That companies like F-Secure or Nortel, an Estonian IT company, are thinking about, okay, do we need to collect all these data? Or isn't it just, pardon my French, just rubbish that we're collecting and we don't need it, and we can cut out some of these, data and things we're collecting to focus on things we're doing, and we probably will make us more efficient, ? So education is the key, but I think for us, working with the civil service and for the civil service, I think we need to keep an eye on what kind of training, what kind of educational programs we offer for our civil servants and for our future civil servants to make them fit for these challenges of the 21st century. So a positive shared vision, I think this is what the hub is doing. And I think, Mr. Chairman, you like music very much, so I'm coming back to electronic music because I thought it fit better in, in this context. It's a band from Germany, you know, which is actually the originator of electronic music. You might remember this line, "We are the robots, we are programmed just to do anything you want us to." I think it's up to us. Education is a key in that sense, and Estonians, again, are leading the example here. So technology cuts both ways. We are the ones who take the decision what's going to happen. In that sense, I thank you very much. I wish you fruitful conversations during the remainder of the conference, and hope to have interesting chats during the conference and in the breaks.